Have you ever heard of grant writing? Most people think it is a mysterious job where people just magically find funding for nonprofits, schools, and community projects. But what does grant writing actually involve? And what does a grant writer even do all day? That's what we're going to be answering in this video. Think of grant writers as everyday superheroes. We use a unique set of skills to get funding for causes that matter, and I am here to show you how. What exactly is grant writing? In a nutshell, grant writing is this process where you're developing a proposal that asks for funding. Organizations like nonprofits, schools, community projects, they need money to get their work done, and often they turn to grants. Money they don't have to pay back from government agencies, foundations, and sometimes even corporations. We're gonna call them the grant makers. For example, let's say you've got this nonprofit. It's trying to build a community garden in an urban area to give kids a safe space to learn about food and nature. They don't have the money to cover the costs like tools, soil, programming, all of that. So they apply for a grant from a local foundation. And the grant writer's job is to craft a proposal that convinces the funder why this community garden matters and why it deserves to get funded. At its core, grant writing is about compelling storytelling. It's about showing funders that a project has a big impact, it aligns with their mission, and it deserves investment. What does a grant writer do? This is where Elastigirl comes in. Here's the thing. While writing is a big part of a grant writer's role, it's actually probably the smallest part of your day-to-day. And I know that's gonna come off as a shock, but the biggest aspect of being a grant writer is actually coordinating, planning, and communicating with different team members and stakeholders to take something that's usually just an idea and make it real. I want you to think of a grant writer as a project manager. To make a strong grant application happen, there's a lot of moving parts and every piece needs to be organized and on track. This is what a kind of closer look of that includes. Number one, coordination and communication. A grant writer does not work alone. You're gonna spend a lot of time gathering information from different people, synthesizing it, setting up meetings, making sure everybody knows what the heck is going on, what's needed, and when things are due. You help with grant readiness. I wish it wasn't this way. I wish applicants, came to you, they're fully ready. All you had to do is write the grant application. Man, our jobs would be so freaking easy. Unfortunately, that's not usually the reality. So what you gotta do is make sure their project is actually developed enough so that you can even do the grant application. And this is where grant readiness is really, really important. That leads us to project planning. Every grant application, it has deadlines, it has milestones, and they need to be met. And a grant writer, that's you, builds out the timeline for each part of this process, setting those deadlines and keeping everyone on track. The thing about project planning skills is that it's really essential because without a clear schedule, it's really easy for things to get off track, and then you're at the end of your project, it's like due, and you're stressing out because there's so much to do. But that doesn't happen to us because we're grant writing unicorns. Grant writing and storytelling. This is when we actually get to the writing part. The grant writer weaves together all of this information gathered and it crafts this compelling story showing why we deserve funding more than anybody else. And by this time you're ready to write, you've actually already coordinated a ton of information to get to this point, and I'm telling you, it's like actually the easy part when you do the other parts right. Next, grant management. Not everybody provides grant management. Some grant writers like it, and they do. I personally hated it. I did not touch it. But this is where you help with reporting to the funder on how you spent the money and the impact that it's had. While grant writing itself is crucial, it's just one piece of a larger puzzle, and I have a whole puzzle video that I'm gonna link up. You can go watch it. To be a successful grant writer, you need to have strong skills in project management and communication. I just cannot emphasize that enough. And if you don't have those skills, you can learn them. No one is born with those skills. There are different paths for a grant writer to take if you want to get into this. There's kind of like two main routes. So route one is the in-house grant writer. You're part of an organization, you work at a nonprofit or a school or whatever, and your job is to secure funding for your organization. You get to know that organization very deeply, probably do other things because, you know, multiple hats, and you get to go really, really deep on crafting very specific and targeted proposals because you're focusing on one cause. You usually would be responsible for grant reporting as well if you are the in-house grant writer. Path 2 is freelancing. Freelancers, they work independently. You're gonna work on a lot of different projects, which I personally preferred because then you're like dangerously knowledgeable about a lot of different topics and you don't get bored easily. Freelance grant writing offers a lot of flexibility and a chance to work with like tons of different causes, makes you the most interesting person at a dinner party, okay? And then if you've confirmed you really enjoy freelancing, I then say that you become a consultant because that's like the next level of growing in terms of hiring others to work with you and all of that. So it's a really fun adventure. No matter what you do, you don't have to decide now. Just know know that there's a lot of different ways to get into this, let alone funding it for your own work. How do you get into grant writing? If you want to get into grant writing and you've never done it before, I want you to think of it as maybe being a side hustle first while you're working full time. And if you're serious about this, I need you to seriously consider joining us in the Global Grant Writing Collective, where it is my solo mission is to help you build a career as a grant writer with more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. This is how I teach you to get into it. Number one, start with a real project. One of the best ways to learn is to dive into something real. We want to see if we've got a local nonprofit or community that needs help with a grant application. That hands-on experience builds your confidence and your competence, giving you a sense of how this whole process works. However, do not volunteer. This is a very problematic way to approach this work because all of a sudden it's like they're doing you a favor and they can be unresponsive, and this doesn't help you because then you don't actually get any experience and you burn out. It's just a bad thing. Next thing is you're gonna learn the research side first. When you think grant writing, I know you're thinking, writing. But the reality is we got to know what grants to go after in the first place, and that is research. You're going to learn how to find grants. Our favorite tool is Instrumental, which I'll link up below. Use the organic networking framework. You might be thinking, how am I going to find a real world project and get paid for it? That's where this model comes into play. I teach this where you create opportunities for yourself through curious conversations, or you might have also heard me call them informational interviews. I'm going to link up in the next video exactly how you do this. Now, if you're thinking, hey, Elastigirl, you gotta be insane. Why would someone pay me when I have no experience? I want you to review Exhibit A. Alexandra, in 6 months, landed our second client worth $9,500. Tiernan, her first federal grant, she won $12.7 million for her client, and she's off surfing on the waves outside of Mexico. Or we got Jordan here, who just signed her third client, doubled her income from her soul-sucking job before. She got an RV, she's been traveling across the country with her daughter. She's absolutely one of my favorite people on earth. And then we got Gail. She decided to retire early, bet on herself, and she already pulled through her first $3,000 in her first month. So look, you can become a grant writing superhero as well. Or if you've been around the block, you know that I'm more about becoming a grant writing unicorn. I've got receipts for days, y'all. So I'm just gonna put a pin in it. We don't have to go into more examples, but I want you to know what all these superheroes have in common is that there was a time in their lives where they didn't know what a grant was, they didn't know what a grant writer did, and they sure as heck didn't know how you actually wrote a good complex grant and won it, and now they do. And they're designing beautiful, unique, aligned lives that have a lot more freedom, they're paying way better, and most importantly, they're making a difference in their community. Grant writing, it's not just about putting words on a page, it's a unique blend of research, storytelling, strategy, communication, and whether you're helping fund that community garden or launching a youth program or supporting conservation efforts, whatever it is, grant writing gives you the power to make real change happen on an exponential level. If you're ready to become a grant writing superhero, or like I said, a grant writing unicorn, I would love to support you in the Grant Writing Collective. What superpower is more amazing than winning free money?